Hello, my name is Zev, and I am introducing you to the 16th episode of Taking Liberties with a Vengeance. Today we have with us Lee from WA
Hello?
and Vickers from far off Canberra.
Your taxes come to die here.
Yeah. And we'll start off this week, I think, by pointing out that today the opposition leader, Bill Shorten, has gone up to the Royal Commission and he's fessed up to all of his sins. And he's been examined by the Commission about a bunch of transactions that went on when he was the National Secretary of the AWU, the Australian Workers' Union. And basically what's happened is that a number of companies, including a labour hire company, have been making payments to the AWU. And coincidentally, the AWU has been entering into agreements with cleaning companies, for example, below the award rate, which is to say there's a minimum wage, so to speak, for every sector in the country. Cleaners are one of them. There's a minimum set of conditions that cleaners get. And the AW cut those conditions and got some convenient payments from associated entities. Is that right? Is it proper? Is it just? Where is the love? Vickers?
So I was where is the love? The love is in the money, mate.
Yeah.
So here's where I'm kind of torn on this. So I think that the workers are getting a shaft here. However, I am pro workers getting the shaft from unions. So,
right.
In that sense, look.
It's a real moral quandary.
It's a moral quandary. Like, if there is anyone who should be shafting workers, it is unions, because that's what they've been doing. That's what they were historically designed to do, right? They were historically designed to, basically either try to price workers out of the market, right, or try to give them benefits that basically force their cost of hire out of the market, or basically create so many unfunded liabilities that the corporations eventually went out of business and everybody was out of a job. It's the union has always existed to shaft the worker.
Yeah,
So,
they don't, but
Particularly
they don't work
foreign workers, but go on.
Well, they're not there to help. I mean, that's the great misnomer of unions, at least their own mythology, is they're not there to help workers. They're there to help their members. And their members and the workers are two different groups of people. So, yes, Vickers is right. They have shafted workers repeatedly over the years.
Thanks for clarifying that. I just realised, that you're
Well,
right.
well, the problem is with this is that they're
They're
taking
most
payments
active
so that
members.
they hurt their own members. So they're supposed to advocate for their members' interests, which would include things like overtime. And what they've done is that they've failed to do that, which is just, I mean, it's a shocking thing that an organisation that's supposedly there to represent the membership didn't do that.
The interests of its members apparently hasn't. And I guess...
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I was just going to say, I think it's really tied into the whole culture of unionism in Australia. And, I mean, not just Australia, but probably elsewhere as well, but that they're not strictly sort of membership organisations. They've got this weird they've got this very strange place within the legal framework for labour in Australia.
They're essentially corporations. They are actually corporations.
Yeah, but it's also just like, they've got this protected role within all these different things, and it's sort of, they're kind of not government backed, but they've kind of got this position where they're not operating in a market. Like, there's not a market for unions. There's this very strange kind of nether realm for.
So I disagree with that strongly.
There is a market for unions.
There is a market for unions. Yeah, so I'll actually explain this entire concept of markets for unions. So the thing is, this is more of an intellectual debate intellectual exercise that's occurred before in the past amongst, I guess you could say, very bleeding heart sort of libertarians versus, your brutalist libertarians, where one argues that it's actually not possible for unions to ever exist out of sheer hatred for unions. But there is a market case for unions in the sense if you're considering bulk buying labor, right? So as a corporation, will be like, well, look, I will give a collective of you these particular rights and these particular privileges. in exchange for you offering me this bulk rate of labor.
Yeah.
Right?
I'm
That
not.
way I don't need to negotiate contracts with each one. I
Yeah.
just have one deal.
And
I'm-
apparent what the workers, you might say, what the workers would get out of it is that they don't necessarily have the knowledge to negotiate, particularly in complex contracts, or negotiate for, say, health and safety provisions and so on. The point is that they have an agent now, the union, which
Yep.
can arrange these things for them.
That is not
Much
Australia
as you might have, you know, a client hiring a lawyer to represent them in a cause,
Yep.
the union is acting as the agent for the members.
Sure.
In
I'm not talking about the
negotiations with
theoretical
the
framework
lawyer.
for unions. Like, I'm not saying there isn't a case for unions. I'm not saying. What I'm saying is that the actual reality.
The reality is that they haven't really done much to help workers
Well,
at all, or their members
yeah.
in many cases.
Well,
And
I don't know
I'd
about that. I
say-
mean, I think it's
Pausing here for a minute, I mean, isn't there a case for the view that, yes, you know, wages have gone down, yes, under this negotiated deal. That's fine, right? That's right. But there is no ideal wage for cleaners in Australia. The entire award system is based on the idea that, you know, there must be a living minimum wage for cleaners in Australia. But that idea is a nonsense. Cleaners come and go and accept the terms that they are willing to accept to carry on their trade.
Yeah.
Now, the union in this case has effectively negotiated for a lower price ceiling for workers. That sounds to me like a beneficial outcome. If cleaners in turn want to negotiate a higher rate of pay, if they think they're providing more valuable work, they're still free to do that on an individual level.
It's interesting, Zev, because you're essentially arguing that the workers in this case have acted in the best interest of their members.
That the union, yes, in a sense, that the union
Well,
has.
yeah.
But this is the argument that some people will make about industrial regulations, that they basically are a vehicle for large companies like the cleaning companies and labour hire companies that have negotiated these sweetheart deals, as they're called, to get the better rates, to get their, you know, to get more business and to get more work for their cleaners. Whereas the smaller businesses and the businesses who aren't as politically connected or aren't as connected with unions lose out.
Yeah,
Correct.
I mean, I think that, like, I think there is a place for, a theoretical place for, you know, a union to negotiate and say, yes, we're going to work with the company to get you guys more jobs, so we actually will work to reduce your pay. But I think what's happening here is that these are secret payments. So it's not they're negotiating in the interest of their members and telling their members this is what they're
They're
doing.
effectively taking a bribe.
They're essentially taking a bribe, and I
There's
think that's
cases
the
for
thing.
that.
So
That's
it's
right.
not, if they said we took we took all these payments from this company, you know, in order to reduce your pay, the members are going to be outraged. So
No doubt.
Correct.
yeah, so I mean, I think
So
We should
isn't-
keep in. Yeah, go on.
So isn't the solution for this like more corporate, well, I don't want to say corporate, but more union governance, right? More of a say with workers, with members of unions and the actual running operations of unions.
well, see, this is what I was going to
Actually, and
to say.
and you know what would help that? Competitive unionism.
That's what
That
I was
would
going to.
help.
That's what I was aiming
Exactly.
at before. So when I said there's not a market for unions, that is that there is a notion of unions have a place in the market, but what we have in reality is this kind of sort of monopoly for unions. Like, I mean, I know that I know there isn't.
Pausing
It's
there
actually
for a minute. As a cleaner or as another member of a certain industries, you can join competing unions. But
No,
that
that's
market.
that's actually not true.
No?
So, what's actually happened is in Fair Work Australia, and I know about this because I tried to do it myself. So I wanted to get into the union game, right? And I had a bunch of people at work I managed to convince, hey, it would be fantastic to have our own union, right? You know, for tax incentives and all sorts of other fun stuff that we found out about unions. I digress. So we started investigating into how to get into it, and we found out that there was a union that already represented our field. And when we started looking at applying with Fair Work Australia to get recognised, they basically said there's already a union in your field. You need to get permission from them
Yeah.
to say that they
Yes.
don't cover
Yes,
your...
it's not. I'm not saying that it's a fully competitive market.
Yeah.
I'm saying that there are multiple unions. For example, the Health Services Union and AWU compete for workers in the same areas. It
No,
may
they
be,
actually no, they actually don't.
I
So
don't.
no, they don't. You'll actually find there's demarcation lines
Yeah.
drawn. So like for example, yeah. It's actually really strict. So for example, my experience was that my workplace is covered by one of three unions. The
Yeah.
first is APESMA, then
Mm.
there's AWU, and
Mm.
then there's AMWU.
Yeah.
Now, varying on which sector you're working in this company,
Yeah,
right?
you can only join one. Really?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
I'm very much amazed because look, I didn't look into the legal side of this, but I have read commentary, just news commentary,
No,
mind you, that
no.
those two were
Anyone who says
competing.
that, anyone who
Yeah.
says that is talking a load of shit.
Yeah.
Like when
It
they
may
say
be
that
true in some areas, but not others. I'm going to look into this briefly,
you,
but
you
let's
better
keep going in the
yeah,
meantime.
you better look into it because I've never seen a case where you can join this union or that union.
Yeah.
Mm.
Right? It'll
And
typically be it'll typically be like this agency has these unions representing them, right? That's what they'll
Yes.
say. But like varying on the section that you're in, you'll only be allowed to join X union.
Yeah.
So like in the public service, the best example is the community sector of CPSU, and I think the other one is in the ACT. What is it? I can't remember the other one. But there's two different unions. Oh, CSU.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Which does
so
create a very big problem, doesn't it? The fact
it
that,
does.
these
You
are
won't-
the only voices you get. You can't actually start your own
No.
union. That's amazing.
Yeah.
Extraordinary.
No, and I've argued for this before, and my Labour friends are typically going like, you can start a union, you just can't start it where a union's already representing people.
Yeah.
It's like that's not the same as me starting a union.
Yeah. Yeah.
You're effectively saying I can only go where the other unions haven't covered people.
Yeah.
That's not voluntary unionism.
But that's exactly you're right. Absolutely right.
So the core sorry the industrial relations sort of law in Australia, as far as unionism goes, is that you have your choice of union or no union.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, look,
That's-
I do
and
know
that is a
this
system-
can actually still appoint a bargaining representative, but that's not a union. But it's obviously
They don't get all the
Still-
privileges.
yeah,
They
that's right. They don't get all those privileges.
And that's a huge thing because I mean, when you start looking into the law and what unions can do and how they can go into workplaces and
no
how they
right
this
of
and that and the
entry.
other and all the legal strikes and illegal
Yeah.
strikes and all this sort of stuff, like that's a huge advantage. And what we're seeing with this union Royal Commission is essentially unions using the, and I mean anybody who understands economics would know this is going to happen. Like it's not unpredictable.
perverse incentives.
Exactly. It's going to create corruption. It's going to create incentives for unions to go to companies and say,
My
unless
main
you give
complaint
me
about-
this money, we're going to have a strike and we're going to cause you problems.
So my main complaint about it isn't any of that. It's the fact that the legal system actually gives them opaqueness.
Yep.
Right? Like
Well-
personally, I think you can solve 99% of things by just saying a union is a corporation. They are subject to the Corporations Act. That one change.
The cost of unionism might increase then, but
That's
go
fine.
on.
That's fine. They'd probably argue for less regulations then. I'm okay with that. That's
Oh, goodness. Okay.
So,
Yeah.
But
so
they'd argue to be exempt from those because they're not really for-profit companies.
I
They're
don't fucking care.
angels. They're on the side of angels.
no. I don't care.
Just
Just
like
declare.
Billy and the rest
I
of them.
don't
and
care what they
Cesar
argue.
Milham,
Just make
Labour
them
MP,
corporate- no,
and
just
all
make-
around good guy.
Just make them subject to the same transparency provisions as any other company, right? They argue for more transparency in company, more regulations for transparency. Make them subject to the same thing.
so okay, let's say, okay, how would that help with the situation of, union, the AMWU going to, a big mining corporation say, unless you give us this training money, we will essentially put strikes.
That's the
We'll
issue.
say,
You see,
so how would the Corporations Act
We've
help
had
with
a
that?
call from it wouldn't, and
It
we've had
wouldn't. No, it wouldn't help
because,
that way.
because this
Like
is
I
the
said, it
thing.
only solves about 90% of problems, dude.
Yeah.
The other 10%. Come on.
This is the thing.
But no, hang on.
It would
I just
partly
want to.
solve the problem because they would have to declare things like that. No, not necessarily, because they'd be judging it to be in the union's interest and not in the particular interests of their officers. So that's not right. No, this would be perhaps noted in their financial reports in more detail, but I'm not sure.
It would be reported in the financial details that they'd be subject to in every quarter.
Yes,
they'd
they
have
would
to say they
to
got that
report
money.
their assets and income, I
Yeah.
suppose. And in
I mean,
that sense,
that's the only change really, because it's public now that they got that much money. I
yes,
allegedly an independent auditor might pick up on it, right? That's the
yes.
idea, right?
And like I think that's a great idea. Like I'm not saying that making them not subject to the I think making them subject to the Corporations Act is a good idea. Like I just think there also has to be other reforms in terms of the competitiveness aspect. That is,
I think that's much
you
more
know,
important.
Well, yeah.
and
Yeah.
also just the place that unions have within labor regulation and how they can call for strikes and
That
how
too.
essentially it allows unions to do things that under essentially a natural law type system wouldn't allow you to do. Like you wouldn't have protected strikes if there
Indeed.
wasn't for the government.
Well,
Like
this is the thing. When we talk about protected strikes, I mean, all of these privileges, they don't even apply. Uh, um, they even apply to to people who don't sign up to the union. This
Yeah.
is the amazing thing. As long as a majority of workers in your workplace sign up and vote on it, the minority actually is forced to go along with it.
Yeah.
Which is quite remarkable.
That's democracy.
Yeah,
Oh.
absolutely. Democracy in the workplace.
Yeah.
You can't choose your own pay and conditions.
I feel like we're segueing into like this massive attack on unions when in fact the real issue here was that Bill Shorten didn't declare $40,000 in.
Well, this is the
in
thing. He didn't
donations.
declare it to the AEC, to the Australian Electoral Commission. Okay, so he forgot to tell the Australian Electoral Commission that he got given 40 grand.
he did tell them just on Monday. Like
on Monday.
Yeah, like 8 years after the election.
Yeah, and the context of that is that he had a campaign director who was paid direct by the labour hire companies. At first paid directly, and then indirectly, the labour hire company paid AWU, who paid the campaign director because someone figured it was getting a bit shady, perhaps.
Here's my favorite part about this entire thing. I remember, what was it again? Like, I think it was just over a year ago. No, it was when the Abbott government first came in, and it was the thing about hockey's, failed family interest declarations or whatever it was. There was some sort of thing where he was like a director like his wife was the director of a company or something for like 10 or 20 years, and he completely forgot to declare it. And I remember the ABC and everyone having like a field day on this. It's just like, how do you forget that your wife was a director for 14 years? So here's my question. Here's my question now. How does Bill Shorten forget that he received $40,000 from a union? Or that he hired a labor union
because
stuff?
they've filled. These people are running multi-million-dollar campaigns. They've got a million things on their minds. And to be frank with you, I don't really think it's any of the Electoral Commission's business what Bill Shorten gets Bill Shorten gets donations from.
Actually, no.
I think the issue is really.
I'm totally fine.
Sorry?
Sorry, I was going to say, my issue with donations is always that I come down on the side of transparency. So I'm very much like how California ended up ruling on, basically, what was it, on campaign donations, right? Anybody can donate to anyone. Just declare it, right?
Look, I don't see any need for declarations. People can make their own judgments. It may be that a political party may judge it wise to publicly declare all of their donations. You can make that judgment about whether you want to vote.
Is that going to be an LDP policy at any stage?
No, I'm not saying that. I'm speaking from principle. In principle, these are private matters, just as any donation to any charity or welfare group or anything for that matter is a private matter between you and the group you're donating to. That's all I'm getting at, in my opinion.
Unfortunately, I disagree with that because politicians have a fair amount of sway.
Yeah.
Of course, but so do a lot of other people. So
having legislative sway is different to having social sway.
Absolutely.
Right? Legislative sway means like if I got elected, right, and Joe Bloggs gives me $5 million to pass a regulatory bill in his favor, right? I've circumvented the democratic process, right, and basically essentially I put my office up for sale,
Yep.
right?
To
Now-
to
now,
to pass a law, you say?
to pass a particular regulation.
Well, isn't that how democracy works already? I'm sorry. I
No,
mean,
no,
don't.
no, no, no. So I actually agree with you. This is how democracy works, which is why I want it to be transparent.
Yep.
Well,
right?
Yeah, I mean, there's also the issue.
I want to be able. I want someone to be able, right, to point at me and say, Vickers, you took $5 billion for that. $5 million from that guy, and then gave him a law that benefited him. I want people to be able to point and basically shame me on that issue.
Well, this is the thing. If you can make that call if you like, but that's something that's a matter for you to put on your own public register. And voters can judge if you don't have a public register. They can say, "Well, I don't trust you." That's the reality.
Well, there's supposed to be I mean, what we're seeing with this is that there already is a legally mandated register, and lots of stuff goes missing in the first place. So I can't imagine it. Yeah, because I mean, it's not even like. I mean, that would be true if there was a market for politicians, but there is not a market for politicians. We are stuck with the politicians we have, and the system remains identical. Even if
there is a market for politicians. It's just a just a very, very weak price signal.
Well, yes,
a very, very weak price signal.
Where weakly mean non-existent.
So I've often wondered about this. So what theoretically should happen, right? Is anyone who registers a political party or registers, on the thing, has to have a bank account that the AEC has, right? Or AEC has complete monitoring control over, right? Now, the AEC doesn't do anything but monitor money coming in and money going out, right? That's it. That's the only thing they have the power of, right? And basically what they do is they say, give a record of what you think every expenditure was and what every donation was, right? Yeah. And then they basically publish a report every month saying...
On that basis. Okay.
On that basis. That's it.
Yep.
Right? And it's up to you whether you explain it or not, whether you want to explain it or not, or anything like that. But this account is monitored by the AEC completely.
Yeah.
Right?
And very stiff penalties for putting having any other accounts that are not, because the issues you essentially need to basically wall up anybody who creates an account outside of that AEC.
All right. So, okay. I
mean, that's reasonable.
So let's say that Bill Shorten has getting back to Bill Shorten, he's forgotten about this $40,000. That evil man. Look, that may speak to wrongdoing or embarrassment.
I think it mostly speaks to forgetfulness, because it's
this is
not
the
unusual.
thing. There's not much really. For all the articles printed in the Australian about how this is not a good day for Bill Shorten, they haven't really gotten something fatal on him, I don't think, yet. They've gotten unethical union payments, which anyone who bothers to look into will say to themselves, well, that's pretty off. But most people aren't going to bother. And I don't think most Labor people are too concerned either, because we had even Andrew Landau, the Vex News quasi-libertarian Labor dude, doesn't really care about these payments. Yeah. He doesn't really care. He doesn't really think there's anything wrong with companies donating to unions. It happens all the time, and there's nothing wrong with it, in principle and in general. He thinks it's all a witch hunt. Oh, by the way, I do think it's all a witch hunt. The Royal Commission itself, complete witch hunt, waste of taxpayers' money, and unjustified coercive activity.
I completely disagree with it. I mean, I think it is coercive, so I think forcing people to testify is wrong.
Yes,
I think people should be free to not testify. But unions are corrupt as hell. They are absolutely. And if there's any, I mean, I think there's obviously you could do Royal Commission have inquiries about a bunch of other things as well. They've picked on unions because it's never going to happen under Labor.
What I don't agree with though is the fact that people can be called and forced to give evidence on issues without their consent. And what I disagree with there specifically is that there are no charges being laid, and no one is being no one is going to trial. No one is being charged here. It's just a rolling inquiry into whomever the commission deems fit, which I really don't agree with.
I mean...
Yeah. In that context, I don't agree with compelling people to give
evidence. I don't think people should be compelled. But I think this sort of inquiry is okay. But people should be free to not incriminate themselves. Because,
I actually think of... I generally think royal commissions are a way for the government of the day to essentially pretend that they're the judiciary.
Yeah,
Because that's
partly.
effectively what it is. That is effectively what it
Partly.
is. Yeah.
And engage in character assassination against the previous government,
Yep.
which seems to be what this government is doing with it, certainly.
Well, considering that all of them are scumbags, I don't actually exactly have a big problem with that. Like,
no,
it's a bipartisan sport,
money,
so
I'm not sure that's the wisest use of taxpayer money.
I'm not. I'm with Steve on this one. I tend to find royal commissions as being these expensive. Like, is there anything that's come out of a royal commission that's resulted in like meaningful change?
Of
Yeah,
course, yes.
like the
Multiple
Fitzgerald
times
one's
judges
probably
make
the biggest one.
recommendations and they get passed.
Yeah.
But those recommendations could have been made without a royal commission.
Yeah.
Or it's a fact-finding exercise with coercive powers. Well, there are fact-finding exercises you can conduct without coercive powers, without hiring a bunch of lawyers, etc.
So effectively, you're saying it's like if you did a ride-on mower on every piece of grass that you saw, rather than just pulling out the weed whacker.
A little bit like that, yeah.
Sorry, I'm watching stuff on lawns right now.
It's kind of like the Royal Commission. I mean, you could get a bunch of investigative journalists to probably get more or less the same information. I mean, there's no crime here yet. That no one's been accused of a crime yet. It's not a police matter. That's what I'm getting at. So these are things that
maybe something to do with Julia Gillard might be
cover up, get his hands on. Sorry.
I mean, Julia Gillard, she like with the stuff going on with like some of the stuff she was involved with, like she might have breached Western Australian law, maybe.
She might have breached
Western Australian law because she might have signed an affidavit or signed some sort of legal document without having.
One person said that. That's true. Yeah. There was one allegation raised, by the way, not in a royal commission, but in a signed statement to the police.
A stat deck?
No, a statement signed with the police. It's a witness statement. It is akin to a stat deck. There are penalties for lying to a statement to the police.
To jail immediately.
Yes.
Perjury.
Yes.
But I mean, there's other royal commissions that have, like, you think about the Fitzgerald one in Queensland that uncovered police corruption. You've got like the WA Inc. Royal Commission that investigated all of the stuff to do with Brian Burke and all those, like, basically massive corruption and cronyism between the Western Australian government and private.
How these royal commissions end up, they end up with things like ICAC, which is a rolling royal commission which just investigates anything and everything.
Yeah.
Now,
it's a mudsling. Well, actually, no, it's a Star Council.
It is a Star.
It's not a Star Council because it's in public.
That's true, but it's still got coercive powers.
Yeah, I would say just from the outset, like I don't
use them
like the coercive powers, but I don't think. I think there can be a place for a public inquiry. Like, justice needs to be done and needs to be seen to be done.
Yep.
And I think in some of these things...
What the courts are for.
Well, the issue really is that the courts rely on the cops. And at least with the Fitzgerald inquiry into police corruption, you can understand why the politicians don't want to rely on the cops.
Yeah.
They want to rely on someone else. So they kind of close off the cops by going to the solicitors or the lawyers at the Office of Public Prosecutions or whoever, and a bunch of other barristers, because barristers are relatively independent people.
Yeah. I mean, like, you could have...
Yeah.
I mean, essentially...
And in that way they avoid it.
If you took out the coercive side of things, essentially what this would be a outsourced parliamentary inquiry. Well,
Yeah,
I don't think parliamentary inquiries have compulsive.
And I don't, and as a libertarian... Damn government spending all to hell, but I don't have a massive problem with parliamentary.
Yeah, I mean, lots of them are stupid, lots of them are vain, and politicians make dicks of themselves in them all the time, and that's what politicians are prone to be doing, and that's the way it is. But I mean, there is a place for that sort of stuff as well. Like, you could, like, it's possible. Like, I think that sort of scrutiny can be a good thing. It can be a terrible thing, but it's. I don't think it's not a bigger waste of money than lots of other stuff that government does. And having it run by judges and lawyers as opposed to the politicians themselves isn't a terrible idea. So
yeah, it's better than having it done by the police. That's true.
Yes. Yeah. So I mean, there is I think it sounds like we can all agree that there is a place for those sorts of inquiry. There can be a place for those sorts of inquiries, but really the coercive side of things is pretty awful. So
and that was a long discussion, it seems. But it seems like we'll have to close off there, having discussed the AW and Royal Commissions. So to Lee and to Vickers, thank you, and good night.
Good night.
See ya.